the phantom miners of Bodie, California. The remote and long-abandoned mining town of Bodie, California, was once a booming hub of activity during the gold rush days of the late 1800s. Located in a remote valley east of the Sierra Nevada mountains, Bodie sprang up seemingly overnight after the discovery of gold in 1859. Thousands flocked to the town seeking riches and opportunities. Saloons, shops, homes, and mines popped up rapidly as Bodie's population swelled to over 10,000 residents in just a few short years. However, by the early 1900s, the gold had dried up and the town was in decline. The mines closed, businesses shuttered, and residents moved on to other towns with more promising prospects. Bodie was eventually completely abandoned by the 1940s, with buildings and belongings left exactly as they were. The town was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1961 and left in a state of arrested decay as a preserved ghost town. And it seems some of Bodie's former residents never left the town, even after death. The spirits of deceased miners are said to still roam the chilly streets and abandoned buildings to this day. Visitors have reported seeing the apparitions of shadowy figures wandering the roads late at night, peering into broken windows, or slowly making their way towards the old mine shafts. Some believe they are the ghosts of miners who perished in accidents, still trying to find their fortune. Others say they are merely the residual hauntings of spirits, continuing the daily routines they followed while alive. Eerie sounds have also been reported coming from the grim Bodie Cemetery on the outskirts of town. Creaking noises emerge from the rickety funeral wagons dotting the graveyard. Howls and cries seem to float on the wind. Gravestones shake and move on their own, as if restless spirits are trapped beneath. And in the middle of the night, phantom lights flicker and glow between the worn wooden crosses, marking forgotten graves. Those who wander the streets of Bodie typically do so during daylight hours only. Locals strongly advise against exploring Bodie at night when the phantom miners are said to come out and claim the town for themselves once again. Spirits lurk in every shadowy nook and cranny, guarding the place they once called home in life. Attempts to stay overnight often result in terrifying poltergeist activity and violent threats from the ghostly inhabitants who do not take kindly to visitors overstaying their welcome after dark. Jake Schofield was one such visitor who chose to ignore the warnings. He was a blogger who investigated supposed haunted sites all across the country. Jake figured spending the night recording Bodie's ghostly phenomenon would make for a great Halloween video on his website. Arriving on a late October afternoon, Jake strolled through the town snapping photos while sunlight still bathed the crumbling buildings. He made sure to capture shots of the abandoned homes, general store, saloon, and mine entrances gaping darkly against the mountainside. As the sun sank lower in the sky, Jake hurried to set up static night vision cameras around what he already determined would be prime ghost hunting spots after scouting the area earlier. By 9 p.m., Jake was ready. He parked himself in the middle of the dusty road, running through town. Turning on an EMF meter to measure electromagnetic energy, Jake called out loudly, "Hello, my name is Jake. I come in peace to this place. I'm here to gather evidence of your existence. Please show yourselves to me tonight." Only the slight rustling of leaves answered his call. Jake knew ghosts tended to take their time making an appearance, if they appeared at all. He had several hours before sunrise to document any paranormal findings. Settling on an overturned crate, Jake took out his digital audio recorder and began asking questions aloud that any spirits nearby could respond to. What is your name? Pause. How did you die? Pause. Are you trapped here? Jake went on like this for nearly 2 hours. But besides the occasional flickering needle on the EMF meter, there seemed to be little ghostly activity stirring. Around midnight, Jake's drooping eyes snapped back open when a sudden loud bang made him jump. It sounded like a rock hitting one of the buildings down the street. Jake leapt up, peering into the darkness, but saw nothing. "Hello," he called tentatively. "Did you make that noise? Please do it again if you want to communicate with me." Silence. Jake's skin prickled with goosebumps as the unearthly cry died off. "Thank you," Jake said excitedly. "Can you make another?" Crash. The deafening sound of shattering glass came from the second floor of the saloon down the road. Adrenaline pumping, Jake began jogging towards the building. But he only made it a few feet when the front doors of the saloon suddenly slammed shut with a resounding bang. Jake stopped short. Cold dread trickled down his spine. The air around him felt charged, pressing down with unspoken warning. This didn't seem like the usual harmless ghosts looking to communicate. Jake slowly began backing away down the street. "Oh, okay. I don't want to intrude here. Thank you for showing yourself. I'll just be leaving now until daylight when I can finish mine." An explosive smash right behind Jake made him whip around with a choked cry. One of his static cameras now lay in pieces on the ground at his feet. Before Jake could react, the EMF meter was torn violently from his shaking hand, sailing through the air to smash into the side of a building. Jake turned and ran. The chilling sound of disembodied laughter seemed to echo all around him. More glass shattered, buildings creaked, heavy footsteps pounded. Jake sprinted out of the town and didn't stop until he reached the safety of his car, parked half a mile down the road. Only once the doors were locked did Jake finally let out the breath he'd been holding in sheer terror. As dawn broke, Jake drove to nearby Carson City and booked a flight home, having captured no ghostly evidence, but vowing to never again stay overnight in the haunted town ruled by its phantom miners after dark. The Curse of Poveglia Island, Italy. Located between Venice and Lido in the Venetian lagoon, you will find Poveglia Island, one of the most haunted and feared locations in Italy. The small island first served as a quarantine colony for plague victims during the Roman era. Black Plague outbreaks continued to sweep through Europe in the 1700s, with Venice being hit particularly hard. At the time, Poveglia Island once again became a dumping ground for diseased corpses and dying plague victims exiled from the mainland. It is estimated that over 160,000 infected men, women, and children came to perish on Poveglia Island over the years. In 1922, the island's horror continued when a psychiatric hospital was opened there. Rumors quickly spread of terrible experiments and torturous treatments performed on patients within its walls. The head doctor was said to have gone mad himself, throwing himself from the hospital tower after being driven insane by the tortured spirits that stalked its corridors. The facility was shut down in 1968, overcrowding and inhumane conditions. Since then, Poveglia Island has been abandoned, left to the mercy of the vengeful souls still inhabiting it. Boats give the island a wide berth, fearful of the otherworldly forces lurking there. Brave visitors who have stepped foot on its shores tell of screams that seem to come from all around, disembodied cries for help, and unexplained cold chills that cut through even the warmest day. Skeletal human remains still wash up along its beaches or poke through the soil. The tortured souls of those who died agonizing plague deaths and mental patients subjected to brutal experiments are said to remain trapped on Poveglia. Their anger and despair permeates the very air. In the crumbling hospital building, ghostly figures have been seen wandering the halls and opening rooms where patients were once locked away. Phantom lights flicker through broken windows. The ground seems to ripple as if still piled high with hastily buried corpses. Yet some require proof before believing such supernatural tales. Giorgio Belvedere was one such skeptic. The loud Italian television host made his living on bombastic shows where he debunked myths and legends. His latest scoffed at the idea that little Poveglia Island was haunted. Giorgio boasted he would spend a week filming there to expose the ghost story as fake once and for all. Despite locals pleading for him not to go, Giorgio arrived via boat with a film crew and cameras one sunny afternoon. As they shot establishing shots, Giorgio hummed it up for the camera. He stomped on the ground, yelling and demanding any spirits show themselves immediately. Crew nervously laughed along as they continued setting up equipment in front of the crumbling hospital. That evening, the crew followed as Giorgio strutted through the hospital halls, shouting taunts. Again, his bravado provoked no paranormal response. By 3 a.m., Giorgio was growing bored. He left the disappointed crew downstairs and headed up to the bell tower rooftop alone. Sitting against the ledge, Giorgio gazed out at the lights of distant Venice across the dark water. Come on, ghosts. I'm all alone and unarmed. Now's your chance to scare me. Giorgio bellowed into the night. He waited. Just as he was about to shout more insults, a loud thunk came from the floor below, like something heavy falling over. Giorgio leapt up. Had the clumsy crew knocked something over? Cautiously, Giorgio peered down the bell tower steps. A dark mass lay crumpled halfway down. Heart pounding, Giorgio stumbled backward to the rooftop ledge. He squinted in the moonlight, trying to make out what had fallen. The shape suddenly moved. A face turned up to look at Giorgio. A face covered in oozing bloody sores and clouded dead eyes. It opened blackened lips to rasp. Leave now. Giorgio screamed and tumbled over the ledge. The film crew found his body dead on the ground below an hour later. Authorities ruled it a freak accident while under the influence. But those who know Poveglia's cursed history suspect otherwise. The island's angry spirits had finally been provoked too far, and they claimed Giorgio as yet another of Poveglia's victims, now condemned to haunt its plague-ridden grounds for eternity. After all, the dead call Poveglia Island home, and they show no mercy to the living who dare disturb them. The ghost town of Ashcroft, British Columbia. High up in the remote wilderness of British Columbia sits the abandoned ghost town of Ashcroft, frozen in time from its heyday during the gold rush era. Ashcroft sprung to life in the mid-1800s as one of the largest boom towns in the region after gold was discovered along the Bonaparte River. Prospectors flooded in, hoping to strike it rich in the gold-filled creeks and riverbanks surrounding Ashcroft. By the late 1800s, the rough-and-tumble town was home to over 10,000 residents. Several stone and wooden buildings went up rapidly, including a railway station, multiple hotels, stores, saloons, and houses. However, by the early 1900s, the gold deposits began to dry up. People and businesses moved on to more profitable towns. The Ashcroft Cemetery filled with those who died from accidents, violence, disease, starvation, or exposure to the harsh mountain winters. By the 1950s, Ashcroft was completely deserted, with buildings, belongings, and even food left half-finished, as if the entire population had vanished into thin air overnight. In recent decades, Ashcroft has become renowned as an eerie abandoned ghost town preserved in time. Old storefront signs, rusted mining equipment and furnishings remain exactly as they were left decades ago when the town was hastily vacated. but some believe certain spirits never left, still haunting the lonely streets and vacant buildings of Ashcroft. Visitors have reported encountering various ghostly apparitions lurking about town. At the once lavish Ashcroft Hotel, the specter of a young prostitute named Rose is said to still occupy what was once her room. Her silhouette is often glimpsed at the window, beckoning to potential customers of the brothel below. The ominous, glowing eyes of a grizzled prospector have been seen glaring from dark corners late at night before he vanishes into thin air. The rowdy sounds of a boisterous saloon often echo at one dilapidated building, complete with raucous laughter and tinkling piano music. Yet not a soul is inside. Even stranger occurrences have been attributed to the Ashcroft Cemetery on the outskirts of town. Headstones shift and spin on the ground as if pushed by an invisible force. Misty shapes form and walk among the graves, only to disappear when approached. And eerie, glowing orbs of light weave erratically through the site at night, possibly supernatural beings or the trapped spirits of those buried there beneath the cold, hard ground. The ghostly activity is believed to be the work of 3 Chinese immigrants wrongfully accused of murder and lynched in the 1800s. Their unjust executions cursed the town, haunting all who lived and died in Ashcroft in the decades that followed. Now only their restless spirits remain as the caretakers of Ashcroft, protecting it in death since they were sorely failed there in life. Amateur ghost hunter Mike Edwards was eager to experience the ghostly phenomenon rumored to take place in Ashcroft. He packed up his second-hand equipment, EMF detectors, spirit box, infrared camera, and embarked on the long drive into the remote wilderness early one October morning. After passing only a few small towns over several hours, Mike eventually spotted the eerie remains of Ashcroft down a worn gravel road. Pulling up just outside town, Mike unloaded his gear and began the hike down the main street. He swept his camera slowly around, capturing the hollow wooden buildings that lined the road. Twisting vines choked their sagging fronts. Cracks spiderwebbed across dirty windows. A decrepit saloon still had half-full beer steins lining its front porch, flecked with decades of rust. As Mike explored deeper, he felt as if he'd stepped back in time 100 years. He could vividly imagine how bustling and alive Ashcroft must have been during its heyday. Now, only lingering spirits remained. Just past midnight, Mike sat in the cobwebbed lobby of the hotel with all his equipment arranged. "Is there anyone here with me tonight?" he asked, aloud. The spirit box static sputtered, but no voices came through. Mike moved to another room and tried again. "Can you tell me your name?" This time, a warbled male voice answered amid the white noise. "We want gold." Mike's eyes widened. "Gold? Is that your name, or are you still seeking gold?" No response came. Mike suddenly recalled the grizzled prospector ghost seen around town. Had the spirit box picked up his voice? Over the next few hours, Mike moved from building to building, asking questions, listening for replies through the spirit box. Catching ghostly voices on tape would be amazing proof to share later online. As dawn approached, Mike headed to the cemetery on Ashcroft's outskirts, utilizing the dead time when spirits were believed most active. Setting the spirit box on a weathered tombstone, Mike said clearly, "Please use this device to speak with me if you are here." Mike waited expectantly as the static filled the quiet morning air. After several long minutes, Mike was about to give up when a faint female voice drifted through the spirit box. "Leave now." Mike stiffened. "Who are you?" he asked. "Did you live in Ashcroft?" "Go. Away. Leave us." The female voice insisted, a bit louder. Mike's excitement faded. Maybe he wasn't as welcome as he thought. Respectfully, Mike switched off the spirit box and began packing up to leave. But just as he lifted his camera bag, the distinct voices of 3 men yelled out from the device. "Leave. Now." Mike ran like the dead themselves were on his heels, and didn't stop until Ashcroft was a speck in his rearview mirror. He had captured hours of possible evidence, but Mike knew the restless spirits guarding Ashcroft wished to remain undisturbed in their decaying gold rush ghost town.